Much sharper.
Woo! Hi everyone, Alex and Eric at Corumdeo Farm. Today's a beautiful day and we are out here pruning. Now we did a video in January of pruning and spraying our fruit trees for winter care. But since then we've been doing a ton of reading, and the book that we have is called Grow a Little Fruit Tree. And the principle of this book is how to keep your fruit trees at a manageable height so that you can, one, more easily harvest from them. Two, you can actually spray the whole tree and really keep it healthy and treated well. And then three, it allows you to fit more trees in a smaller amount of space. So since then, we've decided to go a little bit of a different direction in our pruning. And what we're about to do is going to be pretty shocking. So I'm going to follow Eric around because he is actually in charge of our fruit trees here on the farm. So I'm going to be following him around and he'll explain what he's about to do, which is going to look like a massacre.
It is a massacre. So we're going to start hacking some trees.
Okay,
all right, so here we have one of our apples. This is our Fuji. And right now, what we're learning from how to grow little fruit trees, we need a good prune, usually in the first season. So we're catching up. But in the book, it mentions if you missed your first season. So she recommends doing the cut at the nursery when you bring your tree home. And we're a little bit late on that process. But we're learning as we go here. And fruit trees already struggle in this area in terms of insect pressure and other kinds of disease. So keeping these things manageable is going to be a key to us moving forward and trying to maintain fruit trees in Oklahoma. So her recommendation is about knee-high. What was the phrase, knee-high to a grasshopper, when you're talking about like little kids?
Oh, yeah.
Like their size. So
yes.
Knee-high to a grasshopper. So I've got obviously a very long knee.
Let me show where your knee
but
is.
That's okay because I'm a taller person. So I can manage probably a foot taller tree than an average person would. But we're still going to try to cut these pretty low, and it's very dramatic. The other thing she mentions is that if you are going to cut it in the second season, you want to make sure its caliper is less than 3/4 of an inch, or at least less than an inch.
So the caliper is the thickness of your main trunk.
Right. So the caliper of this tree is still very young. So this is a very small tree. And the reason you want to do this in the winter for your first prune, so the book doesn't really care that much about winter pruning, but it does care about it in its very first season in order to make that terminal cut. This is what we're going to do. We're actually making a terminal cut. In a sense, it's both terminal and a heading cut because it's going to force it to put all the rest of its energy into the leftover branches, or, as you'll see with one of these trees, probably no branches. That'll be a stick.
Oh no.
So everyone's going to freak out about this, and she talks about that in the book. Even in the professional realm, the professional arborists hate this because it's very difficult to do. But she's adamant. They have experimented over a very long time with the very dramatic cuts to see how well trees can handle a very dramatic prune in order to have it force those much lower scaffolding.
Yeah.
So you want to push that initial scaffold really low on the tree. One of the things to remember is that in the winter, when a tree goes dormant, it puts all of its energy back into its roots. And before spring, it'll start to push that energy back up into growth. And most trees deal with a winter cut with an incredibly vigorous growth. And so in the book, she's not super interested in vigorous growth long term, but we can use that to jumpstart the lower scaffolding on the tree. And then her key to the small prune is actually going to be a lot of summer pruning around summer solstice in order to force the heading cuts to shape the tree and to also retard its growth, because you don't want the tree to get that big. So in the winter, this doesn't really retard its growth, even though it's counterintuitive, right? I mean, it looks like you're just about to chop the whole tree in half, and it's like, well, you just retarded that tree really.
Right. But
really
we'll be able
deeply.
to do follow-up videos to show in the summer how much growth has occurred since these cuts.
Usually it rebounds with the same length of growth that you cut off.
Which is crazy.
which is crazy. And so on this tree,
Let's do it.
we've got, there's the modified central leader. So most times nurseries will cut it somewhere up at the top, but they pick way too high in terms of that cut because they just can't sell sticks. And we get
No
it
one's buying
psychologically.
sticks.
Nobody buys just a stick out of the ground, but that's the recommendation. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to go around and I'm going to hopefully find a junction point about my knee. Now, if I was probably not being generous, I'd probably cut it here. Leave this one. This might be a little bit high on this. The other key to this is that when you find the branch, you can't cut too high above it, but you don't want to get too close, and you want to follow an angle with it so that it kind of matches the branch. This is a good 45-degree scaffold, and that's what the kind of branch that you want. You want it to be about halfway between 90 degrees, so about straight out, to 45 degrees. So these are some good little branches here. This is a nice one down here. And I bet you we'll get some on this side. There's a couple shoots here that'll pick a branch. So I'm going to pick my very sharp, recently sharpened cuts. I'm going to go right above
All right, hold on.
this branch.
Hold on.
So I'm going to try to pick an angle here that allows me to get pretty close without getting too close to this branch. And then we are just going to lop this thing off.
Oh my gosh.
Good green.
A stick.
Good green growth here, babe.
Yeah.
Probably would want to get a little bit closer than this. I might come back in later and get the other smaller hand shears because this is a bit strong, but
Yeah.
I don't want to go too steep an angle because you really want to match and get real close. Too high, it creates too much dead, and then too close, you're going to impact where it's going to send this energy. So this is okay, but it's hard to get in there with a bigger pair of shears, but it's also hard to cut with a pair of hand shears. So
this is what here. Show what you just removed.
So that took off about half that tree.
Wow, wow.
If it was a bigger tree, you wouldn't want to take more than a third off, but this is still a very small caliper tree.
And they're 1 year old from planting.
Right, so this is what you would want to do the first year. So we are taking somewhat of a risk here with what these things are doing. They may never quite be what you'd want. We have some more trees coming in, bare root, that we're going to do this right away on before we put them in the ground. But because these are small, young trees, I'm hoping it will rebound. The problem with a thicker caliper is it may not be able to push branches out of its thicker stem. But I don't think that's the case here. We've actually got some good growth points on this, so I hope that he really rebounds. And here in Oklahoma, for a small tree, this is great because there's so much wind to battle.
Oh, it can focus on root growth for stabilization.
It really will put its energy in. So we're getting ahead of the curve here. This is a pretty good scaffold for this tree to grow. And, we don't want it. Let's see if you can back up. This is where it was.
Just fell over a blackberry.
Where it was is almost as high as we want it.
Yeah.
You want to keep most fruit trees under 8 feet.
Nope.
So that's where we're at. So there she is. Our first.
Let's go cut some more trees in half.
Some more trees in half. All right, so this is our nectarine. I selected this one.
Hey.
Because it had a lot of fruit on it, but I didn't know anything when I selected it. But this tree actually doesn't need that kind of cut because it already is, if we look here, its lower scaffolding is already about knee height. There's no other leader. I mean, this is technically its leader, but I don't need to get dramatic in here. Plus, he's actually well over 1.5 inches in caliper, so I don't really want to mess in terms of the cut with this nectarine. And another thing here that we've learned is, especially in our state, is the burlap wrapping around the base is something we need to be doing on more of our trees to protect them against any sensitive boring critters. So they did a pretty good job on this nectarine of pruning it to be a small tree. And I bet you this year we see a lot of fruit on it.
I think you're right.
So there's going to be a lot of terminal cuts to deal with some of the water spouts. We've got a lot of tall water spouts that we just need to snip back, but we don't want to get rid of all of them because if we get rid of all the water spouts, it will just fire them off again this year. Yeah. So we'll probably thin it down about 50 to 60%, the water spouts. I don't really know a whole lot of pruning we need to do
No, I love this tree.
this winter.
I love this tree.
On this little nectarine, this little popsicle.
I know, I love it.
So she's doing great, and she's a great manageable size. You know, there might be some at the top here that we try to force it to put its energy in some of the lower branches, but right now, I'm not going to touch this one. So this is a Gala apple. It's still a very small sub-inch, probably a little over 3/4 of an inch caliper tree. But unfortunately, as you can see here, the first scaffold is way too high.
It's almost hip high for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is, even with these semi-dwarf and dwarf variety trees, what that means is you might get 5 to 10 feet smaller than non-dwarf stock, rootstock. That still means a tree that's like 15 to 20 feet tall. You're just not gonna, it's gonna be too much fruit. It's gonna be too much to manage. You'll need special equipment.
You won't be able to get the spray to the top.
Yeah, the disease will get unmanageable. And so on this poor girl, you know, we're talking.
Well, what's that? That'll be.
Yeah, I mean, we could cheat and try to do it there, but we got a bud here that I would put some energy in.
Like you said,
all these little nodules. I mean, this one's not going to happen because that one was cut.
So you said the caliper is not too thick. It's not too old.
Right. I mean, this is getting a little high, but you know, because this isn't our first year, we didn't do this right before we planted them, which is what you want to do. You know, we've got to make compromises. So this will never be the ideal cut. Hopefully in a couple weeks, or I guess it's the end of March when we get the bare rootstock trees, we'll have a better choice. But even at those, if you might lop them off. Some of this makes you cheap, but I guess we'll pick that one, and we'll still end up with a more manageable tree. It's just going to be taller than we probably want in time.
All right, this one we're cutting, and there will be no branches.
Where's the handheld? Just feel like we're gonna.
I think you can do it. That person that drove by just wondered why they watched us cut a tree in half.
So again, this is probably about 1/4 of an inch too high, but I'm going to come back through with hand shears and try to fix that. I'm just trying to get in here for some of these, but that's very
This is our most dramatic one. Look at that. What is that nonsense?
This is our biggest and was most mature. What was this, a 15-gallon?
Yep.
Probably when we bought it?
Apple.
The risk when you buy the bigger tree is it looks beautiful in the nursery, but you can't do much with that first cut. This is way too thick down here to do that cut, unfortunately. It's first off, I don't even think I can get these big shears around it. So this is too thick to do the cut, as she calls it in the book. I don't even think when we first planted it, we could have made the cut.
No,
the good news about this tree is that it already has lower scaffolding. They're a little wide. This isn't the ideal heading for a branch. You'd want it to be a little bit higher. So we have a good lower scaffolding here already above the knee. And I'd like to get it down here. Cedar is, but the other thing you got to be careful is you really don't want to try to take more than 1/3 of the tree off, especially this size in a given season.
It'll stress it too much trying to heal.
Too much when they're a bigger tree like this, because that's a lot of weight, a lot of mass to take off. So
where are you going to cut?
I was going to try to take this top third off.
Okay.
Because right now, this spring, it's going to put all of its energy up here.
The tips of the tree.
Want to send it. It's going to keep going up, and I'm already taller than I want to be.
Yeah.
For a fruit tree.
That's 8 feet.
So yeah, we're already. It's probably even higher than 8 feet. So all this up here, no go.
All right.
So
where's the cut?
We want to try over the next couple years to try to work it down. So if we can take 1/3 away this year of its branches, its mass, maybe next year I can take another 1/3 of it away, and we'll work it back down here so that these branches here become kind of the main approach. The one that I don't quite know.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, I was thinking above this branch for now.
Like you said, we can work on it again next year. Hold on, I want to grab the tree also. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Good green.
That's pretty good, pretty close.
Look at that. And you'll probably, like, I can use this as a pointer. Are you going to maybe prune any of this or leave it like as maybe in the summer for shaping?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is art. This tree's now a little unbalanced. I mean, ultimately, this branch, I want to go even further. Probably down. I don't want to take any more off. So she's going to look at a lopsided, and that's one of the things she makes in the book. She makes a point that most people who, in their second season, if they miss, it's really hard to come in and do this cut and to really still will ultimately want this tree, even if it isn't as beautiful as you would have. So, you know, this girl may not be. Should trees be girls or guys? I don't know.
I think girls, because they have pretty spring blossoms.
Because they have flowers.
Yeah.
Probably won't be as ideal as we want, but I don't even think from the get-go this tree would.
No.
It was big. It was just big. This was way over an inch and a half.
So don't buy the largest tree at the nursery.
Buy the smallest tree.
Resist.
We've got some other stuff to deal with on this tree.
Because we did not wrap it.
We noticed some insect boring, and I think we maybe saw some down here lower. And so we got to wrap it and treat it to try to save her. But I think she'll be all right.
I think so.
She might be our sweet little, crippled tree at some point.
Ugly duckling.
But I bet produces good fruit
Woo-hoo!
in time if we can figure it out. See, this is an example right here of a prune that's too long. See how that just dies way too long? So those are the kind of things you want to avoid on a tree. Cut.
Look at the little snip. Beep.
Let's see if I can deal with that. This is borderline here because she's actually a really healthy tree.
It's a pear tree. Oh, what is that?
Some sort of animal.
What is that? Take it off.
Well, I'm about to take this whole top off.
Oh,
so.
okay, good.
Freaking!
Oh my gosh. What lays eggs like that? Well, that's how you get trees infested with bagworms that you can't treat because it's too high. Yeah, these all have bagworms, and we can't spray that high.
So this one is a really thick caliper now, really straight tree.
There's a
lot of things going wrong because it's got a lot of straight branches up here that we want to actually try to work out. So we're going to get some tree spacers here, try a spring hits to push these branches so that they head more in that 45-degree angle. Also thick enough that I'm nervous about. We were going to cut here, give it a nice set of 4, but I think it's a little too big out there in one season. This is a pear, so I'm going to try to take off right below this tag, I think.
Okay.
And that's where we'll go this season. These are the dramatic ones.
I know, just do it.
These are the hard ones.
Ah!
So, let me just say one thing. One of the things in the book she says is that when you're this close to a lower scaffold, your temptation is, I'll just cut above there, but don't do it.
Knee height.
This is already my knee height. This is significantly higher. So, I mean, you're going to deal with the fact that this could be dramatic. I'm tempted here to go against her advice.
Well, plum trees don't get as tall as apples and pears. Look on the tag.
The issue with this in her book is that if you do this, it will not force out branches.
No.
So it will put its energy in these branches for the rest of its life. So And we know that we're risking that some of these may not be pushing through any branches later.
Yeah, but look at this one. Plums are so much smaller than apples.
Right, but 12, 15 feet high and 15 to 20 feet high.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you cut here, like we might have a 9-foot tree.
Well, join us at YouTube channel in 10 years.
Subscribe to find out.
Subscribe to find
Come
out.
back in 5 years for an update video.
Well, we'll just do it here.
Oh my gosh, it's just too hard.
That's breaking her rule. Everybody thinks we're breaking her rule anyways.
Right?
Or breaking a rule. So.
So I can't just take these trees and put them in the compost pile because they're all starting to get bud swell. So I'm going to get my pruners and I'm going to cut a bunch of these limbs and force the branches inside so they'll blossom in the house so I can enjoy the scent and the color and kind of be their last foray of life. So I don't feel like I've wasted or not gotten to enjoy all of the spring blossoms. So that's what I'm going to do with the prunings.
Well, I've still got a lot of little prunes to do, but those were the big hard prunes, and that is pretty hard. And because we're a year late, this just stunted basically any fruit by another year. So this is why you want to do this right away.
Delayed gratification.
In fact, she recommends talking to somebody experienced at your local nursery and saying, I want to do the cut for a little fruit tree. They might be like, I've never heard of it. They might be like, I know what you're talking about.
You're saying rip off the Band-Aid before you can feel
right. She said, and she's like, the great point she makes is like, hey, that's a lot easier to transport a stick home than an 8-foot tree.
You don't need a trailer.
No trailer.
We needed a trailer for the big apple and then we just cut it in half. So
most of what we're learning with farming is a matter of patience. It's year by year. It takes a long time to grow these things.
And to do it right in the beginning so
right.
you don't spend the rest of the life of the tree
Cursing
troubleshooting it. Yeah.
Cursing it and saying, you know, even if you didn't deal with the bug issues and potential disease issues trying to spray.
The mess, all the wasted fruit.
Yeah, the fruit bombs that happen because
and
these
rot on the ground.
You're just going to be dealing with fruit too high to pick. Because you also have to do fruit thinning, right? I mean, you can't have too many on a branch. You've got to do all sorts of tasks with fruit thinning, with making sure there's not too deep and heavy clusters hanging on branches, which can damage your branches if you can't reach them. So build a small tree from the beginning so that in 8 to 10 years, you just love it because you just walk up to it and you can pluck the tree, you can find the issues, you can pull the bagworms off, you can
Another
see...
thing we forgot to mention that I think is relevant to most people is if you don't have a lot of property and you don't have a lot of space and you really are in a suburban backyard and you want fruit trees and you don't think you can have a bunch of different kind of fruit trees, if you use this pruning technique, you could fit 4, 6 fruit trees in a backyard if you keep them 6, 7-foot lollipops to enjoy a bunch of variety of different fruit. If you do it this way, if you do it the standard way, which is you just plant it and then semi forget it, you're going to have a beast of a one tree with all this mess we've mentioned, and you're not going to have quality fruit, and you're not going to get to enjoy variety. So this pruning technique should be called like the suburban backyard tree
Well, I mean, her whole focus is on the backyard fruit tree. Yeah. It's not focused on professional orchards,
like big orchards.
But even orchards use a lot of these techniques because they're just easier to manage. And so they're easier to pick. You don't need as much specialty equipment. Yeah, maybe they can get their cherry pickers out and deal with, you know, a lot more height. But you still are battling, you know, you're battling a lot with fruit trees. And so the little guys produce.
Trust the process is what you're saying.
Yeah, so join us in 10 years when we give you an update.
No, subscribe, and in June or July when is the summer solstice?
It's usually late June.
So we will do a video and we'll be able to show you, and this is the fun thing about YouTube, is like, this is where we cut, this is the growth.
There might even be a link here in June if you're watching this.
Yeah,
somewhere around here to a later video so that you can see, did some of the sticks push a new branch or
and
two?
How much they grew, yeah.
And we'll also see how well they deal with it. If they're all dead, we'll be honest and we'll say it didn't work in the second year.
We'll change the title.
We'll change the title like I just killed my trees. And everyone can come back and be like, I told you. But I'm trusting the wisdom of those who've gone before and who recommend this for healthy, thriving fruit trees for your family for years to come. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, mostly. Right?
I bet you the gals are going to make their guys do
So
this
they
cut because they're going to not want to.
become an arborist. You can't become an arborist. And the other thing about this, when you buy the smaller trees, they're far cheaper. So the risk...
Oh, yeah, like if we fail, it's like, okay, well, we murdered the $30 tree. Let's try again next year. Instead of we bought the 15-gallon tree and I just murdered
a $170 tree.
Yeah.
So start small. I mean, it's apparently you just got to be patient.
Small and mighty.
Small and mighty.
Right. See you in the next video.
Bye. In theory. Yeah, no, my arm's tired because I dug a giant hole today.